Yeah, we're live right at 11 a.m., I guess. Yeah. So early edition ish. I think I'm going to be starting these a little bit earlier, though, so I can, get up and start the day. But today we're going to be talking about two things. One is they're both basically project cars. The Dodge Omni, which I'm calling Project OMNI-VORE, because I think it just, it rolls off the tongue. It's pretty good. We're going to talk about that and also the giveaway Nova. So as some of you guys may know already from last night, I'm officially giving away the 1972 Nova project car. Lots of stuff goes with it. I'm giving it away for nothing. You don't have to buy any merchandise, or you don't have to. It's not a raffle. You don't have to do any of that stuff. I'm just giving it away. But here are the rules. One, you need to send me an email, and I'll put my email address down here right away so you guys can see it. You need to send me an email at this address, although not caps though. Get rid of my caps lock. Send an email to that email address if you'd like to win the Project Nova. You can take a look at the video from yesterday. You can see what it looks like, and I'll be putting up more. But here are the rules. One is that you have to come pick the car up. It's in Northern California, so you have to come get it. It has to be done by the first part of May. You have to get the car running in 30 days or less and send me a burnout video. You can stick whatever motor in you want. It has a transmission and a rear end and a drive shaft. It has a Saginaw 3-speed manual trans in it. It was originally a 6-cylinder car. You have to get it running and do a burnout video, and you cannot sell the car. You cannot just turn around and sell it. It has to be a project car. You have to take it out, run drag strip runs or whatever you're going to do with it, do burnout videos, whatever you're going to do with it, but you have to keep it, for some period of time or whatever. So you send me an email and tell me who you are and what engine you're going to put in it, and tell me that you can come pick it up and do a burnout video for it, and then maybe what you have planned for it. If it's let's say you recently saved a busload of nuns or whatever, give me some kind of story about why you're the person that should be given the Nova, because I'm just giving it away. I don't have room for it, so the Nova has to go, and so that's the giveaway for the Nova. So if you guys are interested in that, please send me an email. I put my email address, and then so that the Nova is not a candidate for total restoration, turning into a Yanko clone. Be more likely, it's fairly rusty, although I think it's from out here, although I think it was sitting in a field, what seems like underwater. I've pressure washed the whole thing many times to try to get as much of the dirt out of it I can. There are holes in the floor. The body's not bad. You can certainly run it the way that it is. Put some stop signs or license plates or other kinds of tin over it, or do new floors for it, whatever you want to do. It has seats. The trunk's in good shape. It has tires and has Krager SS wheels and stuff on it. So you get it done and do what you're going to do with it, and then send me a video, and then we want to celebrate with you and get the car done. So that's the Nova. So if you're interested in it, make sure to do thumbs up and like and share and do all that stuff. So the next thing, and the thing that we're going to talk about mostly today, is the Dodge Omni. I have a 1985 Dodge Omni Turbo that I'm going to get running and drive around. But I have two motors right now that we're going to be doing testing on the dyno with. One is not the motor that came in the car. I got another motor from the wrecking yard, from a local wrecking yard, that was in a 1984 Dodge 600. And so it's an early 2.2 turbo motor. And if you know anything about these motors, that particular one came with small turbo, non-intercooled. It's a draw-through throttle body with the throttle body in front of the turbo, oddly enough. And as I said, no intercooler. It was the bare basics kind of thing. Turns out that we actually got this thing running. Honestly, we stand started it, and that video's up. You can take a look at that. And we're going to be running it with a Holley management system, not the factory stuff. What I did was, and the video is up on that as well, you can see what I did is modify the distributor Basically, it's got a 4-pulse in the distributor, and I just put an LS crank trigger on it, and then we're running it with a Holley based on that. So we've, like I said, we've already started it, ran it, but it was not in good shape. So we were having it rebuilt, and I'm rebuilding it basically in the stock bottom end. We're put ring gap in it, and then put the stock head on it. And we have lots of other testing that I'm going to do. We're going to run the 85 in it, or we're running different boost levels, we'll run different camshafts in it. We're going to test all the intake manifolds on it. The early one, the log style manifold, the 1-piece, the 2-piece. I'm going to make a Super Richie adjustable intake manifold for it. We're going to test the draw through versus the blow through stuff. We're going to test different intercoolers, you name it. I just want to get all the information that I can to the 2.2, 2.5 Dodge community. And obviously we're running at different boost levels and show what boost does and stuff. And then the cool thing is to show what boost levels do with other different modifications, because that's really the key. And it doesn't matter whether it's this 2.2 liter turbo motor or an LS or a small block Chevy or Coyote or whatever it is. Boost just multiplies what you're starting with. So if you have a stock motor, it's not making very much power, and you add boost to it, you're not going to get very much gain per pound of boost. If you make the naturally aspirated motor more powerful, then you're going to get bigger gains. And that's how it works out. The more powerful the NA motor is, the better you're going to be able to do as you start adding different boost levels, and it will respond better, because that's what happens. If you run 10 pounds on a 100 horsepower motor, you're not going to make as much power as if you were adding 10 pounds on a 300 or 400 horsepower NA motor. So that's how it works out. So you want to make the NA motor as powerful as you can, which means that when we do a buildup on this 2.5, and that's what we're going to talk about today, we want to try to do everything that we can to make that combination make more power just starting off. Because like I said, if we're starting with a motor, an 8.5 to 1 motor, and especially in the case of the smaller 2.2, in the non-intercooled version, I mean, that motor might not even make 100 horsepower NA. So you can see it just takes a lot of boost to get any power out of it. By contrast, if we, first of all, on the motor that I have, we step up to a 2.5, right away, you're going to be making more power because it's bigger. So if we have a bigger motor, and then these will be the questions. Should I change the static compression? I'm going to do forged pistons for it. I'm going to do forged rods and forged pistons. So should I step up from the 8.5 to 10 to 1 or 10.5 to 1 or something? So should we step up in that? If you then do a ported head, which we'll definitely do, I have a head being ported right now by Dave Vizard. If you guys have not gone over and checked out his channel, you definitely should, because he's a legend in the industry and has forgotten more than I'll ever know about head porting. So he's doing a 2.2 head. And so on these Dodge motors, we have an early and late cylinder head, essentially. The later head also has the roller cams in it, which I like. So we want to do an early ported head, which is Dave is doing. I'm also going to do a later ported head, which somebody else will do. And if you port the head, obviously camshaft becomes a critical thing. I know after going through all of the, whenever I decide I'm going to do a new kind of other guy's motor and test it for the first time, I go down the rabbit hole, go online like everybody does, try to get as much information as I can. And you'll get a lot of guys that will say, well, you don't need to change the cams. You just need to turn the boost up. Yes and no. Like I said, if you just turn the boost up, you're going to get more power, because that's what happens. Like I said, boost is a multiplier. But I want to multiply something that's making more power. So the stock cam is not optimized for power production. It was optimized for what they were trying to do with it and reach the power output that they needed to do in stock trim, and do other things too. Last for a long time, be inexpensive to make, have few or no warranty issues, produce the combination of mileage and longevity. And so they have a bunch of criteria that they have to make for the camshaft that have nothing to do with maximum performance. So by design, almost any factory camshaft is going to be mild, especially on a turbo motor, because it's easy to make the power level. Especially back then, they were only looking to make 140 or 150 horsepower. And they had NA motors that were already making, in the Shelby version, I think was already making 110. Now, obviously, this is lower compression, but they only had to run 7 pounds of boost. So it was easy for them to make the power that they wanted to make back then, back in the 80s. So fast forward to now, and if we're looking at making more power, what you want to do to make more power with these motors is in the buildup, and this is what we're talking about on the project buildup for the 2.5, we need to make that NA motor more powerful. So ported head camshaft is going to be critical for that. We want to put a much bigger, much more aggressive camshaft in. We want more lift, we want more duration. And I know that a lot of guys are worried, because I get this all the time on the LS stuff. Well, you can't have any overlap. You got to have a cam that doesn't have any overlap, or all that wonderful boost is going to bleed out. No, that's not what happens. We want a camshaft that's going to make good NA power. And a camshaft is going to make power in the RPM range that we want it to make power in. Right now, this motor is probably going to make peak power at, less than 5,500 RPM, 52 or 5,300 or something. And especially on the 2.5, it's going to be lower than it is on the 2.2, because the bigger motor effectively tames the cam timing and also affects where the intake runner length is going to be designed to make power. So the 2.5 traditionally would make power at a lower engine speed than a 2.2. The same thing happens with an LS. A 4.8 will make power at a higher engine speed than a 5.3 or a 6.0 if it has the same cylinder heads, camshaft, and intake manifold. So we want to have a pretty aggressive camshaft in this thing. We want to have a ported head. Then we have to look at intake manifold. The intake manifold, a lot of guys will look at, and I know from going down the rabbit hole on the Dodge stuff, there is a big concern about flow. Oh, we have to have not only more flow from the intake manifold, which is partly true, and we have to have even flow, again, also true. But what these manifolds didn't have, especially the early ones, is they had no runner length in them. They were just a log. The intake manifold could have just as well functioned as the log style manifold for the exhaust, because all they did was when they did, I think the original one, they basically did it in terms of packaging. They needed to fit because it was a non-cross flow head, they needed to package the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold, the turbo, the throttle body, all of the stuff that goes with it between the engine, which I think is why it's a slant 4, between the engine and the firewall. So that meant them making just, and back then, I think also this is fairly early on in the turbo development stuff. They just figured that the turbo would, blow air in, and they didn't have to worry about that. Later on, they would switch to a long runner or a longer runner intake manifold, which helps power production. And the intake manifold, like the camshaft, will determine the effective operating range of the motor, where this motor wants to make power. Now, because this camshaft and cylinder head, the camshaft was mild from the factory, and the cylinder head is fairly restrictive in terms of flow. It's not like they had like a 4-valve head or something on here. This thing still, even with a short runner manifold, made peak power at a fairly low engine speed, which means that when we put a long runner manifold on it, it's just going to make more power through the whole range compared to the early short runner manifold. The short runner manifold is a terrible idea and should be replaced, which we will be doing. So we'll make a manifold, and like I said, I'm going to make an adjustable manifold just to demonstrate what happens when you make it short and then make it really long, so we can go to extremes. And then somewhere in the middle there, we will find the runner length that we need to run in the RPM range we want. So if we want to make a big power number, we'll shorten the runner length. And if we want to make a good average power number, we'll have some other combination. But it'll be good stuff to show you. And then I don't know if I'll be able to do tapered runners, or maybe we could 3D print them or something like that. But otherwise, if I just use aluminum ones, they'll probably just be a constant diameter, which will still allow us to make a lot of power. Big throttle bodies on a blow-through application. On a draw-through application like the early 2.2 that we have, a bigger throttle body will come into play because you want to maximize the airflow going into the turbo. But here's the thing. We can put a 200 millimeter throttle body on there in front of the turbo, but if the opening of the turbo is only 40 millimeters or 50 millimeters or whatever it is, you're going to get to a point where it doesn't matter how big of a throttle open. You can just have no throttle body on there and just let the turbo do what it needs to do. Put a radius entry like this kind of thing in the front of the throttle body, and then maximize the flow into it. At some point, the opening in front of the turbo is going to be not important because it just can't flow any more air no matter what you put on there. And then that also happens when we package the turbo and the intercooler and the intake manifold the way that God and nature intended it to be, with the turbo blowing boost through the throttle body and then into the intake manifold. When you do that, the throttle body sizing also becomes less critical. Now, it needs to be a minimum size to work with what you're doing, but because we're pressurizing the throttle body, the flow rate of the throttle body goes up dramatically. So it becomes less of a restriction than it does when we're trying to draw through it. And this becomes, more of an issue as we go up in turbo size. So if we're trying to make 200 horsepower and we have a 200 horsepower turbo on there, we obviously don't need a very big throttle body in either combination. But if we start talking about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 700 horsepower, and we have that size turbo on there, along with the other things like the ported head and the camshaft and the intake manifold that go along with that, then we need a turbo that will support that. But anything, even for 600 or 700 horsepower, when we're talking about being boosted, if we had like a 60 or 65 or a 70 millimeter throttle body on there, all of that is more than enough. And I know, coming from all of the testing that I did with the 4-valve Honda stuff when we went to Bonneville, a 65 millimeter throttle body even at 700 or 800 horsepower is not a restriction on the turbo application when you're blowing through the throttle body. So all of those things will be fairly easy to solve. So lots of cool Dodge stuff testing coming up. And I was just thinking that, and as a matter of fact, we'll do our poll here. Create a poll. Okay, wait, what happened here? Oh, I just did a random poll here. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so the poll for today, for this morning, or this afternoon, I guess by now. Should I go for more than 600 horsepower with the turbo 2.5 liter buildup? Let's get 100%. We won't. You never do. There will always be those. Let's see. So this is our new poll. Yeah, I don't know. I just clicked on poll and it just made one before. So the poll is: should I go for more than 600 horsepower on the 2.5 liter buildup for the Dodge Omni? Should we go for, like, should it be a maximum effort thing? So what I'm thinking of is that this thing, I have a set of forged pistons for it, and I was thinking about just putting the forged pistons, honing the block, surfacing the deck, get a new head for it, put it on there, put the turbo on there, and go and just drive it around. It has a forged piston in it. That's one option. The other option is just, if I have it apart, let's just put a forged rotating assembly in it. Let's put I don't know if there's a forged 2.5 liter crank. They're certainly not from the factory. And I don't know if somebody makes an aftermarket one. I'll have to take a look into that. I'm actually not worried about the strength of the factory crank, because I've never broken a cast crank or a steel crank with any amount of power. And I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that's usually not the thing that goes. Usually it's a rod or a piston. So if we put forged rods and forged pistons in it, and then put an MLS head gasket on it, head studs, a good ported cylinder head, camshaft, yada, 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 and a good oil pump and oiling system and all that. And then I think we can turn this thing up to whatever we can make with it. I say no, you'll drive over the crank. That's good. So should we do 600? More than 600. So that just means, you know, and that if you, the thing is with this kind of combination is that even with all of that stuff, even if you put that kind of effort into it, if you do, you know, see, because you want to put a turbo on, then we got to make some noise. If you're going to put boost to this thing, that's why I want to do ported head and cam and intake manifold so that this thing makes power. Otherwise, you got to run like 1,000,000 pounds of boost. You're talking about, like on a stock motor, you're talking about making 6 or 7 horsepower per pound of boost. It's you don't get very much gain, and so you have to make you have to run a lot of boost to get any kind of gain. So you start modifying it, then you have to. So I'll give you an idea. So if this motor makes 100 horsepower NA, because that's how we have to base on how much power we get per pound of boost. So if we divide that by 14.7, that means that each pound of boost will give us roughly 6.8 horsepower. Now, it would be a little bit more than that if we did E85, which we plan on running on anyway. And we'll show you what the difference between 91 and E85 is at some lower boost levels. But, you know, if we, and you can scale this up pretty easily, if we now make 200 horsepower, we're now making 13.6 horsepower per pound of boost. Even that is not a lot, but because as you can see, it takes a lot of, you know, it takes a 10, we're only going to add 136 horsepower at 10 pounds of boost. And so at 26 pounds, you know, you can do the easy double math kind of thing and it works out, but you can see that why it takes a lot of power or a lot of boost to start making like a good amount of power. That's why we want to do everything that we can to make lots of NA power. And this is why, for instance, a Honda K series that would make 300 horsepower. Come on. So, you know, you're looking at 20 horsepower per pound on a 300 horsepower NA K series, which is pretty easy to do. 300 horsepower flywheel deal. We did that fairly easily on the K24 stuff because it has lots of cylinder head and we put, you know, decent skunk cams in. It's got a good intake manifold and all of that. So it becomes a lot easier. That's why the 2.5 Dodge motor would be hard pressed to make the kind of power that a 2.5 liter K series does. 2.4 versus 2.5, but the displacement really isn't the thing. The thing is the head flow and the intake manifold and the cam timing and all that. That's why it gets harder to do. That's why one engine can make more power than another under boost, certainly at the same boost level, because it's starting out making a lot more power NA, and you know that's so. We still have 29% saying no, that we don't want that much power. It's going to need a lot more than 3 bar, I think. What is with the Matt Happel thing? We know Matt, and Matt's a good guy. Okay, I don't know, Max. I don't know what your deal is. Frank, please install a back pressure sensor so we can measure total engine pressure ratio. We will have back pressure measurements on it. Richard, we know you won't go over 600 horsepower maybe on the engine dyno. Which clutch would you run? Which trans? I have a trans already. It has the upgraded trans in this thing. It has a clutch. This thing was already running 20 something pounds of boost on it. You can literally get a junkyard trans from a Dakota that will handle that power. I don't think he's going to spend that much money. The trans is already there, so I'm not worried about that. That it already came with the trans that will handle that kind of power. And right now we're going to make 600. I'm talking about 600 flywheel horsepower too. All it needs is a cam and head that make 200 horsepower, 600. It's nice. Certainly think 200 wheel or flywheel horsepower is possible with that 2.5. I don't, or the 2.4. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. And then we'll put head studs and obviously MLS head gasket on it. I don't have any quarter mile goals for it. I have power goals for it right now. I just figure if I'm going to do if I have the 2.5 or the 2.2 that we're going to do all the testing on, and then we have the 2.5. I don't know why I keep calling it 2.4. Maybe I'm thinking Honda. If we have the 2.2 that I can do all the testing on the engine dyno, and a motor needs to go in there, why don't we put something good in there? So the question is, if there are any 2.2, 2.5 people here, what cylinder head would you use for that? Would you use the bathtub head, or would you use this, what is it, the 781 or 782, or would you use the late model head? And would you use the flat tappet cam, or would you use the roller cam? I'm leaning toward the later model roller stuff in the 781 or the 782 head. The G head, the OG head. Will any of your testing lead to additional camshafts? Yeah, I think that is possible. The heads are awash once all the work's been done. So when they're ported, you think that they flow the same? Does the head from the Conquest fit? That's a different engine family, so I'm not sure. Guys have put the 4-valve SRT4 stuff on there, but that's not the direction I want to go. I had heavily modified ported swirl heads with big valves, and the G head got me the best power. The chair's a lot more horsepower than was possible back when I used to play with them. Well, most guys just put, not a lot of guys did, especially when these things first started, they were just turning the boost up. And then on non-intercooled ones, they were putting intercoolers on them. The other mistake that a lot of guys were making is they were using factory ECUs and then not knowing what the timing actually was when they were running boost, and then trying to get them programmed for different size injectors and stuff. And so we're not going to have any of that. I'm going to have obviously on the engine dyno, we'll have a standalone ECU that we can make sure that the air, fuel, and timing are exactly what we want. Yeah, Dean, we'll be doing this on the engine dyno. Do you often put heads on a flow bench to test them? Yeah, I've tested a lot, like hundreds and hundreds of cylinder heads on the flow bench. A Rampage would be cool. I'm going down to disassemble this 2.5 probably tomorrow. I say the more valves, the more chance for a fail. A 4-valve head is pretty well scienced out. I don't know about doing that upgrade because I like to go on and watch some more YouTubes on that, and that would be interesting. but that's not the direction I want to go. If I was going to do that, I would just swap in the SRT4 motor and trans probably. And if I was going to swap a motor and trans in there, it would be a K series. It wouldn't be an SRT4 motor. I know that that's heresy and it's not a Dodge one, but it's a better motor and it makes a lot more power. I think the bathtub head helped me to have lower compression, allow me to run higher boost. So that's the other thing is I wouldn't go lower in boost. I would go higher in boost. I mean, I would go higher in static compression. To build a motor, I wouldn't start out at 8.5 to 1. I would start out at 10 to 1 or something. Silly question, Richard. Every cam is a boosted cam, but are some more efficient? The way that I look at that is if I look at the camshaft and one camshaft makes more power NA, it's going to make more power under boost. That I look at it only, I don't look at the valve events. I don't look at that. I look at what the camshaft does and what the power curve looks like. And then if one cam makes more power than the other cam, NA, it's going to make more power under boost. That's how I view it. Do you think flat slide carburetors have a different reaction to part throttle compared to normal? Where is a flat slide carburetor? I don't know if I've seen one of those. Are you talking about like I've seen some variable Venturi carburetors that do that. What makes the K-Series motor so good? Well, everything about it is good. The valve train is really good. The head flow is really good. The cam timing is really good. It has variable cam timing. The intake manifold design is really good. All of those things. It has more RPM capability. It has more flow capability. It makes more NA power, at least certainly compared to this Dodge. I don't know about the Barras. I don't have any plans for that right now. Can you share your goals for the 2.5 liter engine dyno? I want to modify it and make as much NA power as I can and then put turbos on it and do a bunch of testing with it and then see how much power we can make. I don't know what it will do because I don't know. I have no idea, having never run one of these other than starting it on the stand. I have no idea what the limitations on these things are. I just know if we start it with something that makes 200, it'll be a lot easier to get to 600. It's still going to take 29 pounds of boost to do it. Actually, I think a little bit less than that because if we add E85 to it. Yeah, Dean, I'm definitely going to use the. I want to do it with the existing heads, either one of them. Motorcycles have round or flat slides. Your thoughts on turbo cams kind of indicate that there may be turbo cams. I've always said that there are turbo cams. There definitely are. There are camshafts that are designed to make, and I'm talking about, I look at it not in the range that I'm talking about. Any camshaft that fits stock piston to valve clearance, like on an LS is typically what we're talking about, but it works for other cams too. Any camshaft that will fit with stock piston to valve clearance, you can run any camshaft. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it's labeled. If you go to somebody and they have any stage 1 through stage 4 truck cam, turbo cam, NA cam, blower cam, whatever it is, if it fits stock piston to valve clearance, you can run boost on it. Now, there are camshafts that will work better and make more power, but they'll also make more power NA. So whatever the camshaft is and whatever it does NA is going to dictate what it does with boost. Let's say you make 600 horsepower with a 2.5 liter. Would you put it in a car making that much power? Yeah, I would. The nice thing about a turbo motor is it doesn't have to be making 600 horsepower all the time. You can run it at 7 pounds and then it's not making 600 horsepower. Checking bore dimensions and measuring the crankshaft on my 2.2 liter today off the machine shop to bore for 20 over Ford pistons. Cool. Overbuilt's in the house. Richard, are you selling the distributor trigger you made for us Turbo Dodge guys that want to ditch the old computers? I can show, I mean, the video is up to show you how to do it. It's something you can do yourself. It's very easy. All I had to do is I used the existing bolts on the distributor. I just made a V-shaped mount, basically, which looks an awful lot like any L-shaped mount that you've ever seen. I just used a piece of angle iron. This was aluminum, and just notched it and drilled a hole in the distributor. It's pretty easy. And then you use an LS crank trigger. Have you already chosen a fuel management system for it? We're running it on the Holly on the engine dyno. Bill, log exhaust manifold or making some sort of header. I'm going to do both. We're going to run the stock exhaust manifold. I'm also going to run the stock exhaust manifold with an adapter to go to a T3 and possibly a T4, depending on what size turbo. I kind of want to run a bigger turbo on it, a turbo that's too big, like a T4, like the GT45 or something, just to demonstrate boost response. Because I honestly don't think that that's a good turbo for what we're doing. I think a T3, T4 hybrid is ultimately going to be what you would want to use on this motor. It doesn't make a 2.5 might have enough, but we'll see. We'll find out what happens. What typically happens on these motors, and we've seen this on even on, it's less prevalent on a VTEC Honda because it has the low speed camshaft in it, which helps low speed power. But on a typical application, especially where we take a motor and put more camshaft in it to try to push power, have it make peak power at 6,000 or 6,500, it's going to lose low speed power because we don't have variable cam and we don't have VTEC in that kind of motor. So we'll lose low speed power. And then if you put a bigger turbo on it, you also lose low speed boost response. So all those things will tend to have it not make boost down low and then make more power up top. So putting a bigger turbo on it will show that. And then if we show you what happens with a bigger turbo, there is probably a combination of turbo, and this is just like camshaft. I'll show you what happens, and you guys get to pick. Oh, well, I probably don't care about making 600 horsepower. I care about making 300 or 400. So I go down in turbo size, and as you go down in turbo size, you go up in response down low. So for most guys, having boost response down low is a much better option because it's a funner combination. You're going to like the low speed response and the torque that you have there much more than you are likely to miss any top end power that you would have from the bigger turbo, unless you're actually drag racing. I wonder if the 818 chassis would fit on the Omni. My ideal combination, like my dream thing for an Omni, not this one, because I wouldn't do it to this one, but I would do it to an Omni or a Horizon. I would want to do it to an NA Omni or Horizon that I could find, would be to lift that body off and put a four-wheel drive K-series based Honda chassis underneath it. That would be cool. Like I want the Omni body on an all-wheel drive K-series powered like combination that made 600 or 700 horsepower, whatever. That would be super cool to me. Is the Holly fuel management system user-friendly for someone who has never done any tuning before? Yeah, it's pretty intuitive, and there's lots of information online on how to do it. I mean, on how to tune it. Yesterday during the afternoon live feed, a gentleman offered to give you a Mopar 300 horsepower, 265 straight 6 Australian Hemi. That is cool, but I wouldn't want him to send an Australian Hemi, and I'm giving away the Nova anyway. To go, if I think he was offering that to go in the Nova, which would be cool. And the other problem is with that particular motor, there's nothing here for me to test with it. And it's not offered here. And so nobody, I mean, the Australian guys would get good information, but they don't have a lot of things that would be offered for that to test. It would be cool even just to run it, which would be awesome. Then I guess I could run a turbo on it or something. Yep, LS pieces have been solving a number of non-LS problems. Don, love your content. Watched the Nova video this morning. Discussion with wife after dinner today will hopefully lead to an entry. P.S. Can't believe you're only at 200,000. Your knowledge is amazing. Thank you very much. There is one all-wheel drive Omni that does run and drive, uses a Chrysler minivan system and a custom rear suspension. That's cool. We need to see a Pinto or a CVH split port injection built. What's a Pinto? I mean, I know what the Pinto car is, but this is not so morning live stream. Yeah. I don't think that this, you guys are talking about the slide valve deal. And I think that the kind of throttle response that you're talking about would be part throttle drivability and not wide open throttle stuff. On the engine dyno, we won't see that, because if you go to wide open throttle, you're already at wide open throttle when we do the initial load part. So that would be something that you would see on the street. And a lot of the drivability portion of it still has to do with runner length and tune and the timing that you have and what cams you have and all that. The minivan stuff is way beefier than the CRV or Civic all-wheel drive stuff. Richard, the stock 2.5 rods were only known to handle approximately 400 foot-pounds. The crank isn't far behind. So what are these guys that are running these 10-second all-wheel or 10-second drag race ones? What they're running 2.5s. What cranks are they running in them? Because I know that they're making 600 horsepower at least. They might be making 600 at the tire. Richard, any update with the David Vizard? Yeah, he sent me an email and said he's still working on it. Daniel, we have a Ford F100 from 76. Has the other guys Ford 300 in it with a single barrel carburetor? I do like those. I've seen a couple of those. I want to do a fuel injected one. If I do one, I won't do a carbureted one. We'll do the EFI with the 2-piece long runner intake manifold on it. They're running a stock crankshaft brand. That's what I thought. And like I said, I'm not worried about the crankshaft on them, and certainly not at 400 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds. And the one that I have is a common block. And given what if you just look at what the LS stuff has done, and even big block cranks and cast small block Ford cranks and all of the things that I've run that are double or triple or 4 times the factory power rating, I'm like I said, I'm not that worried about that. Steve James Reeves, 577 wheel horsepower. See, that's way over 600 using a stock cast 2.5 crank. That's what I thought. The cranks have never been an issue. The rods are good for a little over 500 wheel horsepower, but not suggested. While it might be interesting to find out, how much we could get away with on that with the right tuning and stuff, I think rods and pistons would be the way to go. And then some of the 2.2 cranks were forged. That's right. The timing chain is an absolute killer on these. The timing chain on the 2.2 is a belt. PS 4-bolt main cap upgrades. So are there 4-bolt upgrades for these? Derby Shop, check and make sure that your thermostat is opening. It sounds like the water's not circulating. When you're getting your own show on television, I don't know. I don't know which transmission is because I'm not that transmission savvy. It is not the original trans that came in that car. It's some sort of upgrade one. It's a later version, maybe. There are custom 4-bolt mains out there. The only time I've broken crank was bad machine shop service on heads, broke spring dampeners and chopped up umbrella seals, restricted oil pump. If you break a crank, something bad happened somewhere else. El Inca. Those 2.5 said balance shafts. Stock turbo Omni. Stock Omni Turbo 525 is a time bomb. The trans did have a tag on the top, and I think that I posted that in one of the early videos. Would a TPI intake manifold be a good candidate for converting to a 413 style cross ram intake? Yeah, you could start out with that because it's already a cross ram lower section. El Inca Racing. So I'll see if I can look that up. Richard, how much power do you think that the stock Ford 300 can handle? Stock bottom end, only mods is a custom intake manifold with carbon ring gap. I don't know with boost. I've never even run one of those. I've never even looked at the inside of one. Yeah, overbuilt. Definitely rods and pistons are a safe way to go. Air turbo to 392 or a 426 Hemi. I have not. Only the 5.7 and 6.1 versions. Yeah, the tall deck was in between the original 2.2 stuff and then the later common blocks. Let's be honest here, fella. He isn't going to splurge on specialty parts. Seeing what will handle stock is all we want to see. That's what you want to see. But that's not everyone. Remember what I said about always saying everyone? I finally learned not to take heads for a performance build to a shop that specializes in tractor engine builds. The cam gear might break on the 300 Ford. Interested to see how far you can take the 2.2. Plan to build a 2.5 for my Jill HS. Everyone said not to run them because they don't rev. So that they're saying that the bigger motor doesn't want to rev. They just don't have enough camshaft and intake manifold and cylinder head on it. That's the problem. I remember reading my Mopar Bible that you can leave the balance shaft out to free up some power. I should have some pictures of the 4-bolt setup. Yeah, if you can send them over to me, that would be interesting. And that would be one of the other tests that would be interesting, is to remove the balance shaft if it's not, too labor and parts extensive to do it. Otherwise, there's no reason to do it. But if I can remove it and show what the power gain is from that or not, and I would do that NA. I wouldn't do it under boost probably, because I'd like to run a bunch of NA tests also. I have the NA intake manifold that somebody sent me. Thank you very much, whoever sent that. And also the NA exhaust manifold. and I'd like to run those and see how well they do, because I honestly think that that's going to actually be a pretty good turbo manifold, because, you know, they're all turbo manifolds. I got a restrictor washer in it and a high volume short water pump for like a 283 or 327. That's all new parts, even stuck a new Speedway radiator head gasket. Is the head gasket on right? I would check to make sure. Take the upper hose off and see, and start the motor up and see if it's pumping water. I mean, obviously do that somewhere where you can spill water all over, or have it, or put a hose into a bucket or whatever, and see if it's processing water. Controlling the rockers at high RPM becomes an issue. They like to spit them out. This is a cam and valve spring issue most of the time. That's more what I'm concerned with on these motors, is as we go up in engine speed, which you need to make horsepower, because you want to, you know, you'd like to have it be 6,500 or something to make power. I'm worried about the valve train on these because I don't know enough about them. A 600 horsepower 6.5 liter or 2.5 liter is going to need to be like at 6,500. I removed my balance shaft and used the holes for the 4-bolt main. Oh, cool. I'll have to look at that. Well, 2.5 liter trans, I think it will. I mean, I think it will definitely do it in gear. I just don't know about speed shifting and stuff. Was there much advantage to upgrading the 2.2, 2.5 with a round tooth timing belt? Guys were telling me to do that, but I don't know. Again, that's having not experienced that for decades. I don't know. Richard, the balance shaft removal eliminates a lot of rotating mass at higher engine speed. I know, but we ran the guys say the same thing about the Honda, the 2.4 versus the 2 liter K series stuff. Oh, you got to get rid of the balance shafts. We ran to 8,000 RPM with the balance shafts. We ran it with the original oil pump too, which everyone says you can't do that. They'll just break. And so I don't know how much of that is absolute or how much of that is just, you know, there's obviously a modicum of common sense there that would be more, and if you take that away, it would be less. That makes sense. But is it really a detriment, or does it help? I don't know. You know, I'd like to see what the trace is for the frequencies and see what that thing is really doing. It might not be doing anything up at the RPM that is beyond what their test RPM was, because they never revved them that high. Haven't used balance shafts on my 2.5s for the last 25 years. Not a problem. See, that's good information. They're not impossible to find. I have an 85 GL8 I've had for 12 years. Super fun car. Derby. So if it is flowing, is it flowing through the block, or is it just flowing through the water pump? Or is it just flowing through? Feel the front and the back of the head to tell me if it's if the front and the back of the block and the head are the same temperature. That was done for NVH. Okay. I always love it here. There you go. My often bad behaviors modified to better. That's good. Non-common block engines can make just as much power as common block engines. So should I go for more than 600 horsepower on the turbo 2.5 buildup? 72% are saying yes. Legend has it that the balance shaft removal is worth 10 to 15 horsepower. I would love to see results. Easy removal and plug the oil feed hole. So what is the plug for the oil feed hole? Is it just a like a pipe plug, or is it a freeze plug, or what is it? If the springs are weak or the lifters are junk, well, we're definitely, when we do the head, we're definitely upgrading the springs. And I don't know about the lifters though. What would be cool is if we could put another kind of lifter on there. I think what I was told is guys are using the late model 4-valve lifters in them, all right? The oil feed hole just has to be tapped and a screw put in it. PT Cruiser lifters, that's what it was. So you should be able to get new versions of those from the dealership, right? And you have to shim so the PT Cruiser lifter is a different length then, like a different installed height. But the shim is just shimming the bottom below the lifter, right? In the insert hole. Those lifters won't work on a regrind. We will initially do a regrind, but I'd like to do a standard base circle cam. I don't know if I can find a core for it though. Plug oil feed can be tapped and plugged or tapped in a dowel pin and cover with a plate held in place with bolt from the balance shaft mount. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. Build the car to drive, go on power tour. No such thing as too much power, just not enough traction. See, that's good. I have seen upwards of 500 plus horsepower on a 2.2 liter 8-valve Omni. I'll be following this for sure, building my 89 Omni. Nice. If you find a core, buy two. And I would be more interested in getting the roller core. I think I just like the idea of the roller. I don't know if that's going to be heavier though or not. Do I like 93 Mitsubishi Eclipses? Yes. Steve, balance shaft oil feed hole, but you can tap it with a 16th NPT or do the Cliff Ramsdale Legend method by plugging it with a press fit of a 1/4-inch rod or the shank of a 1/4 20 bolt. Then make a tab to cover it. We check the head gasket and all of that pulled up hose flows like it should. That's just by using stock block as cold heads are fire. I agree that the roller cams are better. I don't know what's going on with your engine. The thing should not heat up at idle. Is there a flow problem through the radiator? Have you checked the flow through the radiator? How is a head porting project coming along? Which one? The 3800 or the 2.2? Which heads are we talking about? 2.2 head. Vizard still has it. And he's doing more work to it. I told him, you're not a legend if that head doesn't come back flowing 500 CFM. And he said it would. You just have to combine all the ports. When I was going through my stuff yesterday, I also did find flow data on the Chevy Sprint, the 1 liter Chevy Sprint head porting that we did. And it flowed a whopping, are you ready? It didn't even flow 104 CFM. It flowed, after we reported it, it flowed less than 100 CFM. Pretty good, huh? I know you're all jealous. I'd love to get a custom cab made for the 2.2. Goal is 400, which vendor stuff will likely work, but not ideal. Most are wrong. I think that there's a lot of misconception about 2.2 liter cams also. Is Tyler having a hard time waking up? Brandon, how do you figure the current cams are wrong? What have you tested to prove that? You do need to test. Did I see that? I need to go back and look at the specs on all these. Did I see that these cams were single pattern cams? I can't remember. I'm interested in how will the North Star heads flow. I don't know that I'll flow those heads. I'm hoping that we just put the motor on there and put a turbo on it, and then it breaks, according to what everybody says. Most of the cams have less exhaust duration. I would certainly think that that would be the wrong way to go. That's not the cam that I would have made if I had a camshaft made for it. Tyler's cooking bacon. There you go. Pull the plug out of the block on both sides. Water flows out both sides. It did with the old radio. Also, there's a new one right out of the box. Take the caps off and see it flows clearly. Sounds like you're checking all the right things. Yeah, my son does bacon, and he does like some sort of maple bacon or something. It's really good. There were adjustable mechanical lifters. I don't know that I would do that. I like the idea of hydraulic, because I want to make it a street motor. The giveaway was announced last night, and what you need to do, Dawn, is there are a number of criteria. I'm just giving it away where I'm going to randomly select somebody. The criteria is that you have to come pick the motor, or it doesn't come with a motor. It comes with the trans and all the rest of the stuff. You have to put your own motor in it. You have to get it running in 30 days from the time that you pick it up, and show me a burnout video in it. So you have to be able to come get it. It's in Northern California. You have to put a motor in it and get it running and do a burnout video in less than 30 days, or it goes to somebody else and you cannot sell it. So those are the criteria. Send me an email and I'll put your name on the list of people that we will choose at random, and we'll do that live. Have you seen the dude in blue Omni GLH video at 470 horsepower? It was one of the scariest cars he's driven. Nothing quite like a 2.2.5 fetish. Tom, not to be a downer, but how are you going to enforce those rules? What, why are you? I had somebody else started asking me like these detailed questions about stuff. I'm like, dude, you're not the guy for this. If you're already trying to figure out a way to get around the system, you're not the guy. Have you done any testing with gapless rings over standard? I used gapless rings on my Engine Masters deal, but I didn't compare them to anything else, and I've never run them under boost. Dean, you got a bacon diet? That is good stuff. So we will stop our poll for today. Should I go for more than 600 horsepower with the turbo 2.5? I thought that this would be 100%. But no, 73% saying yes and 27% saying no. So maybe there's some daily driver guys out there. So we'll end that poll. Thank you guys all for participating in that. It's got a restrictor washer in it. My Omni has a stock 88 Turbo 2 engine in it. That would be good. I like those. 15 PSI can be handful. You know, torque steer is like that stuff. I mean, I had obviously you have driven the Civic at I think that one was at, well, when it was run at Bonneville, it was probably at, I don't know, 500 or 510 or 20 or something at the tire at the time. But driving it on the Salt at part throttle until we're going 150 or 60 miles an hour and then going to wide open throttle, it's pretty easy on stuff. We just have to worry about traction more than anything. I didn't do any, obviously, drag race launches on it. Total Seal has a podcast and it has me wanting to use them on the 2.5 build. I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think that that's where, if you're looking for that to be an edge in power, that's not where I would look. You have a lot of other things for that Dodge Omni motor where you can get big chunks of power and you're not going to get it with rings. And I love the Total Seal guys and they're good guys, but that's not where I'd be looking. "30 days takes some commitment." It does. It's more for a guy that already has an engine sitting there, which there are lots of guys that have that. And they just decide, I'm going to make this happen. And honestly, if you have the engine, and the hard part would be making sure that you have the clutch and the flywheel, because really all you'd have to do, and I've never done it, just get the engine mounted with a clutch and flywheel in there. You don't even have to hook up the radiator or any of that stuff to do a burnout, really. And like we were talking about last night, a gravity fed carburetor IV and a battery or a jump start or whatever, and you get the engine running and do a burnout. That really is not that too involved. I'm not saying you have to get it prepped for the zip tie drags or the duct tape drags or whatever. Just get it running and so that we can hear it and do a burnout. So by the life, you want a crispy or no crispy bacon? There's not really a bad way to have bacon, right? I know, maple, because that's the only thing that could make bacon better. 76 Nova 850, 8.5 to 1 compression, high energy 268. Oh, that's good. Stock stall is soggy. Yeah, you're going to need converter on that. For one thing, I'm hoping that it's a dual plane intake manifold and a smallish carburetor on there. You have a couple things that are hurting you. I don't know what heads are on that, but maybe it's a 76 cc chamber like smog head on there. If it is a 76 350, that's probably what's on there. So all of that stuff is combining to kind of hurt you. I'm hoping it's not a single plane. That would be even worse. But if it's a dual plane, you could mill the heads or put any kind of good head on there. But a converter, probably 2800 or something is going to help you. Tom, you could still enter. We could just get your name in there. Noodles, what's up? How long has it been the stream? The stream's been live for an hour and 9 minutes. I'm going to have to get going here pretty quickly. Us Canadians just put on the fancy sauce on maple bacon. We just pour maple syrup on it. That's all good. I'll make maple bacon on your pizza. Oh, okay, that'll work. I lap my top rings to the lands. Are you lapping the tops and bottoms of them so they fit in the ring lands, or are you lapping the sealing surface? What do you tell me about that? It's good to have you progressively turbocharge every engine until they blow, so we have an idea of how much we can push an engine with a turbo and some durability. I think with the, like, if for instance, let's say that I took a stock unknown condition kind of North Star engine, put it up on the dyno, and then ran boost on it. That might not tell us the strength limit of something, because maybe the thing had already been overheated once or twice in its life. Maybe the head gasket was on the verge of going. You know, the only way to know that stuff for sure would be to kind of do what we do on the big bang stuff, on the stock bottom end stuff, is make sure that everything is right. And even then we don't know, because if like on some of these motors that have 200,000 or 300,000 miles on them, you know, where are we at in its cycle life? Everything has a cycle life. And if the rods are 2/3 of the way through their cycle life, you know, have we lost some of the strength in the rod, or the rings not sealed? You know, there's a lot of things. The only way to do it would be to start with a brand new fresh engine and then do that, so that everything's brand new, and then we can figure out the strength issue. But I think we'll still get information from it doing the North Star thing. Hopefully what would happen is we run the North Star and we run a turbo and an intercooler and injectors and the 85 on it, and it makes 500 or 600 horsepower or whatever. And people go, hey, look, when things are right, it does that, which is more often than not what we find out. We usually go past whatever the internet number is for guys saying, oh, look, the 4.6 liter rods will break at 400 horsepower or whatever. It's not, it's just never that. You should do a 3V modular engine, push the engine to 1200 like the LS 4.8. I don't know that a 3V would go there, but I haven't ever run one there. Tom, that's part of the deal, is when they're signing up, they tell me what engine that they have to put in it and what their plan is. The sealing surface is top and bottom of the ring and the piston ringland. Okay. That's the key to ring seal, is making sure that the ring is lapped into the ringland. The wall seal is minimum. By the life racing, yeah, that would be really nice. You should do 100 big bang engines of similar condition and do an average. Yeah, that would be nice. That would only cost more money than I make. You should make the entries cost $25. Nope, not going to do that. The transmission that's in it right now is a Chevy bolt pattern. Obviously, it was an inline 6-cylinder, a 250, what it originally came with on the Nova, if that's what you're talking about. Calvin's going to try for 1,000 wheel horsepower with 4,200. Calvin sent me an email about the Nova entry. He's like, because obviously I mentioned it the other night. He's all in on wanting to do the Nova, because I think he saw the poll that we did on it. It would be cool to have him do a 4,200 in it. A $25 cat adoption fee. So Dean's all in on the pancakes and maple syrup and the happy smile and the check, but there's no bacon. There's the bacon one. There you go. I'm not the reason that there's no money involved in this is I'm not doing it as a money making thing. I want to say thanks to everybody for supporting the channel and hopefully get this to one of the people that have been supporting the channel. It's important that the land stay sealed up and down. The walls have less surface. Okay. So you're not wanting the ring to wiggle around in there? That'd be an interesting interview to talk to the guys from Total Seal and see what that ring clearance is, and then what the surface finish that they want, if there's any change in that. It's important that the land stays sealed. Is compression going not past the ring and the wall? Is it going through the ring and the ring land and the piston and then going out? Is that what you're saying? 2 more minutes. Gas ported rings. I've seen some testing on that stuff. So now maybe I should have done more ring prep on my big bang motors. The highest horsepower 4-valve modular engine is 1600 horsepower Mustang. That's not even close. look at Mahovis's motor. If it fits, it ships. If it fits, it boosts. Come on, one more question. Who's going to get the last question? So Braden, you'll get the last question. What are your thoughts on steak? Well, I think it should be combined with bacon, obviously, and it is awesome. It makes great sandwiches. Have you seen Project Farms videos? Yes, I have. Okay, I've got to get going. Thank you guys all for showing up. I see I obviously have a lot more emails now, so some people are responding to the Nova thing, which is good. And I'm excited about going down, and I have motors like, as a matter of fact, I don't even know if I'm going to get any dyno testing done. I have so many motors that I have to take apart and put back together. Right now, the 2.5 is still attached to the trans, so I need to separate that, take it all apart, and get that thing redone. The head was completely torched. I'm told that people can fix that, but I'm a little skeptical of welding that head up and then subjecting it to 1,000,000 pounds of boost or whatever that it takes to make 600 horsepower, let's say. So I think I'd have to get another head, which I think I did get another 782 head or late model head. And I think that they're just surfacing it and doing a valve job on it right now. And then I'm going to try to send it out to have it ported. I'm wondering, I need to get with Turbo Monza, because I found some dyno results or some airflow results on some 3800 heads that I think, according to the data way back, I think Brian Tooley ported these for me. So I need to grab that data and take a look and see where it was. I need to look at it and see what size valves and stuff, and see if that information is there. Lots of good stuff. Like I said, also found the flow data on the Sprint, because we did some really interesting things with the Sprint head. Fred, the guy from AccuFab, did mostly concentrated on very, very minor porting to not change the port volume at all in the port. Concentrated on valve job and stuff, because we were trying to do more interested in fuel mileage stuff. So we were trying to do stuff that we thought would affect that part throttle fuel mileage, because I was trying to get, hyper mile stuff. We were trying to go see how far over 50 miles per gallon that we could get on this thing, and not just in some 3 mile steady state or downhill, lift throttle cruise kind of situation, where we would get actually over 50 miles per gallon on a long haul. And this was I was doing trips from Vegas at the time, from Vegas out to West Tech and back. And these included lots of big hills. So we had to go over the Cajon Pass and Mountain Pass. And so these are with like real world driving conditions. So we were doing things, so I have all the data on that. So maybe I'll do a discussion on that, and then we'll take a look at also the head flow data on the 3800. So lots of cool stuff that I found. That's what happens when you go ahead and try to get organized and clean up. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you tonight.